Hello, everyone. I'm Becky Goldsmith, and I'd like to thank you for joining me for this time out. I'm on time this week. That's so exciting. I almost wasn't, but I am. I'm here right now. And this week, let's see here. Oh, wait a second. I think I'm on the wrong thing. Okay, there we go. I'm on the right thing. So this tells you I'm Becky Goldsmith and with Piece of Cake. You can find me at pieceofcake.com. And the quilt behind me is Embracing Adventure, and it is from the hand sewing book. And I don't think I showed this to you last week. I might have. It's my brand new book about hand sewing, which leads directly into today's topic, because today I'm going to talk to you about, it's a new product. They are, let me move them over here, English Paper Piecing Specialty Papers. Why? Why do you need this? Why did I think you need this? Well, I'm going to tell you, and I made a video, which is good because the video will tell you more. This is the cover of my book, Hand Sewing. When you open it up, inside you'll find instructions for 5 different kinds of hand sewing. The one I want to talk to you about right now is English paper piecing. There are 8 different English paper pieced blocks in this quilt. But there are 12 spaces for the blocks, so at least 4 are repeated. And there might be some that you want to not make at all and repeat others more than once, and the choice is yours. The main thing is that when I was designing this quilt, I wanted to do original blocks, blocks that there weren't papers for. What that meant was I had to figure out the best, most efficient way to get papers made, not just for me, but for everybody else who was going to make these blocks. I had to figure out the best way to get the papers. And I spent quite a bit of time figuring out what the best weight and type of paper to use to make those English papers from. I was used to working with prepackaged papers. So I opened up these packages and I felt of them and realized that they're cardstock, but they're not heavyweight cardstock. The papers I like the best are a little bit slick, so that was the kind of cardstock I was looking for. And I looked all over. I looked at my local craft stores and I did not find the right weight, and besides it was too expensive. I went to Office Depot, and you know, you have to buy 500 sheets. You can't just buy a few sheets of the kind of cardstock I wanted. And I did buy a couple of different reams of cardstock, but ultimately I talked to Betsy at C&T, and she found a wide variety of cardstocks and let me choose the best ones. It took a little while, but this is the cardstock that is just perfect. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it's a little bit slick, but not too slick. It's white, goes through a printer, it's perfect. Okay, the thing about it being white is important because some of the cardstock I tried was, the stuff you use in scrapbooking, and it was colored. Colored cardstock doesn't work as well because it shadows through the fabric when you're trying to audition it. So colored cardstock, not a win. And besides the scrapbooking cardstock, it's too heavy. It's just wrong. Anyway, so getting the right cardstock in packages of 35 is good, because I can tell you I've got several hundred sheets of cardstock that is not right, that I don't really exactly know what I'm going to do with. Okay, so you get the cardstock. How does it work? I'm going to show you.
Open the book to page 37, and that's where the English paper pieced patterns begin. Most of them are on one page, and you'll need 2 copies to get all the papers for one block. This one block, block number 2, has almost everything on one page except for the 2 corners that are over here. What's wonderful about this book is that it has lay flat binding, and it's easy to make the copies. And I've already done that with block number 2. The instructions in the book explain all of the numbering sequences and what the little X's are for that you'll find on the pattern, so I don't need to go into that now. I just want to show you how it works. You use your scissors. Could you use a rotary cutter? Well, I suppose so. I chose not to because I have more control with my scissors. And you cut these out. I'm using my, I think they're 5.5 inch, 5.25 inch Kai serrated embroidery scissors. They have a nice long blade that allows me to cut farther along the blade as I'm going. And the serration in this case helps me to control the cut. What I typically do is cut away the outside excess paper, and then I start breaking down the interior of the block along as long as straight lines as I can. So up to this point, it makes perfect sense, right? You make the copy onto cardstock and you cut out the shapes. When you use these particular papers, because they are numbered and they are all different, this would correspond to, the side of the paper with numbers corresponds to the wrong side of the fabric, because you want to be able to see these numbers as you're constructing your block. In most cases, it doesn't matter because these blocks are radially symmetrical. If you've got an image that when you turn it upside down, it changes the direction in a way you don't like, you would want to make a reverse copy of the pattern, or make a straight up copy and write the numbers on the back of the paper. Either would work. What I realized as I was cutting out my blocks was that I really was in charge of the scissors. When I drew this pattern, I really thought I would want to have 3 strips of fabric in the block corners. When I was choosing fabrics and designing my own quilt, I realized that I did not want 3 pieces of fabric in the block corners. I only wanted 2. Because I'm in charge of the scissors, I was able to alter the pattern. When I cut my corners out, I had number 5 and I left 6 and 7 together. There is a lot of power that comes with that realization. You could make this block more complex than it is. You could take your ruler and cut these diamonds in half and make them out of 2 fabrics. You could do the same on almost all of these shapes. I don't think you'd want to here because the diamonds are pretty small and pointy as it is. But what if you wanted to have pink on one side and blue on the other, and you didn't have a striped fabric? You could separate number 1 into 2 shapes. I thought this was pretty exciting. Block number 5 is an excellent example of a block that you can simplify the shapes to take advantage of, say, striped fabric. This block, as I imagined it and made it, has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of fabric right here in this wedge. But what if you have a stripe that does the work for you? In that case, you would leave this wedge as one big piece and not cut it up. In block number 7, I did that very thing. I did not cut 3 and 4 apart. I left that as one shape and let a piece of striped fabric do the work around the block. There are instructions inside hand sewing that suggest this very thing to you, that you are in charge of the scissors and you can alter these blocks in the ways that suit you best. But where else can you use this idea? There's lots of places.
So many places. So hand sewing, yes, it's a book you definitely need for your own library. There's a lot of information there. But there's other places you can use this. But before I go forward, let me answer Nikki's question. It was specifically about cutting. When you are cutting these shapes apart, do cut right down the center of the drawn line. And let me think what else. Okay, the other thing, oh wait, something else. Lorna sent me something else. Okay, Lorna said that there is a question about inconsistent cutting. Well, either try to be more accurate or use a rotary cutter and ruler and cut more carefully. The other thing is, I mean, think about how these shapes fit together. It's like a puzzle. You could put little hash marks, on the lines you're going to cut, or leave yourself notes so that when you cut a block apart, these two lines actually are the lines that go right next to each other. And that way, if you're a little bit inconsistent, your puzzle will still fit together there. So you have to look at that. One other thing that's going to be true, not just in these papers, but in every English paper piecing project, and I do talk about this in the book, is that your papers are going to fit together perfectly before you put fabric around them. When you put the fabric around the papers, interesting things can start to happen because the fabric occupies space around the papers. And let's say you've got a block that's got 1, 2, 3 things sewn together next to a single shape. Well, if you basted very loosely, or if your fabric happens to be kind of coarse, or one of them happens to be a little coarse, your pieced unit can get a little big next to the piece that didn't have any extra stuff going on in it. It's cost of doing business. This is hand sewing. So as you're sewing, you account for that. You can squish the shapes in and make them fit better. I know you think that that's not true, but it is. You can do it. I've done it. So that is another thing to consider as you're cutting your shapes apart and choosing fabric to sew together and looking at how many pieced pieces are going next to a piece that hasn't been pieced. Okay. But I wanted to talk to you about some other place that you can use this idea and use these papers that you might not have thought of. And that is, let's see, is this the one I'm going to show first? Oh, no, I'm showing this one first. See, I've got things in order and I lost track. So I have online on Creative Spark a class on English paper piecing. And in the class, there is one block from hand piecing, and then there's another block. It's called Stars and Pines, and you can see I made my class block out of Christmas fabrics. But you can color the quilt any which way you want to come up with different things. So the way mine is colored, that interior big medallion looks like 4 pine trees, but it doesn't have to. But the main thing is that in the online class, there is a lot of information not just how to prepare the papers, but how to baste and sew and trim and piece together all kinds of stuff. Spark, there's a link on my website. You can also Google it and it'll come up. But the other places that you can use, you can English paper piece that you might not have thought of, and that is in foundation paper piecing, machine foundation paper pieced patterns. And I want to show you my thoughts.
Once you start thinking about it, there are lots of quilts that might not have been designed for English paper piecing that would work with English paper piecing. And I think my Bullseye Quilts pattern pack is one of them. This quilt is designed for foundation paper piecing. The patterns include seam allowances and that sort of information. But the sewing line, which is marked with the solid line, they're marked. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this with English paper piecing. What you would do is copy the patterns inside the pack onto the English paper piecing papers, cut them apart, and English paper piece it rather than doing foundation paper piecing. Is one technique better or worse than another? No, they're different. It just depends on the kind of sewing you want to do. I made a copy of the center circle pattern onto the cardstock just so I could show you how you would cut it out. For foundation paper piecing, you need the seam allowances. So don't get confused. I'm not cutting this out for foundation paper piecing. If I wanted to English paper piece this, I would cut the shapes out on the sewing line. And all the way around. These are straight lines inside each one of the units. They would be easy to English paper piece. If I was doing this with English paper piecing, I would construct all of the units doing the English paper piecing stitch on the straight lines, and then I would probably take the papers out and hand piece the curved seams. To make the center, you would have two halves, and I would cut these apart on the solid lines. Those are the sewing lines. I would English paper piece this together, and I would make the correct number of units for ring number 1, sew them together side by side. This would be really easy sewing. You would take the papers out of the ring and out of this ring and hand piece this in place inside of ring number 1, and then you would build out from there. Each ring handled the same way. The more I think about it, the more I think this would be a really fun quilt to do with English paper piecing. What the English paper piecing specialty paper does is open up a wide variety of patterns that you might not have thought about English paper piecing. It opens up the possibility that you could English paper piece them.
Okay, so think about, I can't help it. I think about all those blocks of Carol Dokes from back in the day. Lots and lots and lots of wonderful foundation paper pieced patterns. Why couldn't you English paper piece them? I don't know why. There might be some of the shapes that would be less exciting to English paper piece than others. But if you're looking for something that's portable, that's handwork, and you like English paper piecing, there's way more out there than there are pre-cut papers. And that is the thing here, right? With this, we're moving away from pre-cut papers. Not that they're bad, it's just that there's a finite number of pre-cut shapes and there's an unlimited number of possibilities. All right, let me think. I had one other question I'm going to answer right here. It was actually a question from my own head that I thought of that I should answer for you. And that's that in the same way that, say, hexagons, English paper pieced hexagons are reusable, these would be reusable as well. So, you don't have to make a bazillion pieces of paper, but you need enough to get the job done. I hope that made sense. Okay, now I want to give you one more idea.
I've shown you this book before. It's The World of Amish Quilts by Rachel and Kenneth Pellman. And there are not patterns inside here, but there are a variety of wonderful quilts. And yes, this is straight line sewing. You could make these quilts on the sewing machine. But what if you would really rather just make something by hand? This sampler quilt on page 31, I'm going to be honest, I don't exactly love the colors, but I like the idea of doing a sampler quilt with English paper piecing. And it would be hard to come up with prepackaged papers for this variety of blocks in exactly the size you want. And that's where having your own paper comes in really handy. Because you can look at these and draft every single one of these with a ruler and a pencil and the English papers. What if you like the idea, but you also like a slightly more improvisational approach to some of those blocks? Well, you can do that too. I've started by drawing an 8-inch square, and I'm going to do the one that has the 8 flying geese. And rather than measuring precisely where these lines go, I'm just going to put my ruler on here and do my line work. For these flying geese, this is roughly 4 inches square, the geese point out of the block. So here, what if I want here? So this goose is going to go there and there. And what if I want the other goose to not go that far, to go there and here? And then I would do the same thing here. I can draw here, take this line up. You get the idea. You are in charge of the pencil and the scissors here. And you can make this block be anything you want. So it can be precise or not precise. And the more of this you draw, I mean, this is pretty fun. Once you get a block drawn, you would want to number it. And I might number this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on around, because every one of these papers is a different shape. You have to stop and think just a little bit with a directional English paper pieced pattern like this, because you want to be able to see these numbers on the wrong side of your fabric. But if you number these shapes and put them with this side up on the wrong side of the fabric and base them and prepare them and sew them together, when you turn it right side up, it will be reversed. What that means is that in this case, this is actually the right side of the paper. So you might want to leave yourself a little note here on directional blocks that you are numbering for the right side So this is the right side of the fabric. When you place these shapes on your fabric to trim them out and then base them, you'll want to write the numbers just on the flip side of the paper so that you can construct the block and have it point the way you want it to. That might be a little confusing right now, but once you get into it, it will make more sense. Anytime you draft a pattern that you like a lot, make a copy of it and keep it so that if you want to make it again or you need more papers, you can copy your original drawing onto the cardstock.
This is pretty fun, isn't it? So imagine me back when I was designing this quilt and I was thinking, okay, so I've got to draw these blocks and I'm going to have this paper, but I could draw anything, but I could use anything, but the possibilities are unlimited. And then I thought about how exciting this would be for everyone else. This is just really fun, right? Now, the other thing is, for those of you who have never drawn a block, you've never done anything like this, give it a go. Give it a shot. Draw something small. You know, if you start with, say, a 6-inch block or an 8-inch block or a whatever, draw some lines on it that look like something to you. You could draw a tree. You could do a Christmas tree. You could draw a Christmas tree with some lines through it. And sew it and see what you think, because before long, you will feel empowered. And I'm hoping it doesn't do me out of a job in the long run as a quilt designer. But I think we all like to be creative, and I would like to help you be as creative as you want to be. So let's see here. Was there anything else? Oh, I know. I was going to tell you, when I'm drawing on paper, I am so particular. I do like to have my very fancy pencil that is sharpened to a very fancy point. These are my Blackwing things. You know, it just makes the drawing process more fun. So the book is Hand Sewing, that has the patterns I showed you and more instructions. The English paper piecing paper, this is it. Look for, you can find it on my website. You can find it at quilt shops. You can find it in a whole lot of places for a long time, I hope. And let me think what else. I do believe that's it. I'm just a couple of minutes shy of my 30 minutes, but that's okay because it's spring outside and everybody should go outside and have a deep breath of fresh air, soak up some sunshine for just a little bit. Let's see. Oh, Lorna says, for those of you who read my newsletter this morning, I did run out of some of the Yazzies. Boy, those Yazzies are really nice. I did run out of them, but we've got more on order, and they ship pretty fast these days. If they're in stock from the place we get them from, they come pretty quick. So always know that you can email Lorna, all one word, lornabethgoldsmith@gmail.com. You can email Lorna if you're looking for something specific, and she will let you know when things will come in, because I don't have to keep up with that. I have other things to keep up with. Isn't it nice? It's really great. I do so appreciate Lorna and Judy, because they keep everything on track that is a lot important to you guys. We all love them. So, okay, I think that's it. Again, go outside, catch a little bit of sun, have a nice deep breath of fresh air, enjoy the day, and until next time, may you have many happy stitches. I'll see you next week to take another time out on Wednesday at 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time.